The restaurant was full of warm chatter, silverware clinking softly against porcelain plates, laughter echoing from couples and families celebrating love, birthdays and new beginnings. But at a corner table near the window, a man sat frozen, his heart pounding louder than the soft jazz playing through the speakers. His name was Ethan Cole, a single father who had spent every spare dollar he had to make this evening perfect. He'd ironed his only good shirt 3 times, polished his shoes with a kitchen towel, and practiced his smile in the mirror, hoping she wouldn't notice. How nervous he was, but now, as his date's expression turned from polite amusement to irritation, Ethan realized that everything, his one shot at moving on, at feeling like more than a struggling dad, was falling apart. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and miracles that come when you least expect them, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Touch of kindness. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope and humanity to life. Ethan's palms were damp as he clutched the edge of the table. His date, Samantha, a woman he'd met through a local community group, sighed impatiently as she checked her phone for the third time. The candlelight flickered across her face, reflecting the faint annoyance. In her eyes she looked stunning, elegant in a navy dress that whispered of confidence and comfort. But right now she looked like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. They've taken forever, she said, frowning at the menu. You'd think a place like this could serve a steak faster. Ethan tried to laugh it off, his voice too light, too forced. Maybe they're just busy tonight, he said, but deep down he knew. It wasn't the kitchen that was ruining the night. It was him. Everything about him screamed ordinary. His sleeves were frayed, his watch cheap, his credit card nearly maxed out just to afford this $50 meal he'd wanted to do something nice for. Once, to feel like the man he used to be before hospital bills, custody battles, and endless shifts at the auto shop drained him of both hope and savings. He'd chosen this restaurant because it looked elegant from the outside. Fairy lights twinkling over the patio, smooth jazz in the air, couples smiling across candlelit tables. But now, under the brightness of its chandeliers, he felt exposed. Like everyone could see through his polite smile and wrinkled collar. When the waiter finally returned, Ethan tried to remain composed, but his throat tightened. As he looked at the menu prices again, he'd already done the math twice. His card could maybe handle dinner, but not dessert, and definitely not if Samantha ordered another glass of wine. Meanwhile, at the next table sat Victoria Lane, a woman whose calm elegance drew glances the moment she entered the room. She was in her mid-40s, confident, composed, and dressed in a way that was effortless but unmistakably refined. She wasn't here for pleasure. At least not tonight. As the CEO of a large real estate firm, her days were usually filled with board meetings, legal documents, and long calls that bled into the night. But tonight, she'd agreed to have dinner with a client who had abruptly cancelled. Now, she sat alone, absently stirring her tea, watching the world around her, until her gaze fell on Ethan. Victoria noticed the way he smiled at his date, despite the disappointment in his eyes, how he leaned forward to listen, how he folded the napkin neatly to hide the nervous trembling of his hands. There was something raw, human, and painfully familiar about that look. A man trying to keep his dignity intact while his world quietly unraveled. Back at Ethan's table, the disaster continued. The waiter returned with their meals, setting down a steak for Samantha and a modest pasta dish for Ethan. But when she cut into her steak, her face twisted. "It's undercooked," she said coldly. "Do they not know what medium well means?" Ethan tried to flag the waiter, apologizing profusely as Samantha rolled her eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "Let me ask them to fix." "Forget it," she snapped. "I just wanted a nice dinner, not this." The words stung. Ethan swallowed hard, his heart dropping lower with every second. He wanted to explain that he'd saved for weeks for this night, skipping his own lunches to afford it. He wanted to tell her that this wasn't just another date for him. It was hope, a fragile step toward moving forward. But he stayed quiet. He'd learned long ago that silence was sometimes the only thing that kept your pride intact. And then came the sound he dreaded, the small beep of a declined card. Ethan froze. The waiter's expression shifted slightly, polite but apologetic. "I'm sorry, sir. It seems the transaction didn't Go through Samantha's face went pale, then red. You didn't just bring me here without being able to pay, did you? She hissed quietly, glancing around. Few nearby diners turned to look, curiosity flickering across their faces. Ethan's chest tightened. He reached for his wallet, pretending to search for another card he knew didn't exist. I'll fix it, he muttered. His voice cracking slightly, the humiliation burned through him like fire, and that's when a calm voice broke through the tension. "Excuse me," it said softly. Victoria Lane stood beside their table, her expression warm but dignified. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, looking directly at the waiter. "I believe there's been some confusion. Please put their meal on my tab." Ethan blinked, stunned. "No, please, that's not necessary," he stammered. Victoria smiled kindly. "It's already done." She turned to him. "You look like a man who just needed a little bit of grace tonight." The entire restaurant seemed to go silent for a heartbeat. Samantha's face flushed with embarrassment. She muttered something under her breath, grabbed her purse, and left without another word. Ethan sat there, speechless, as Victoria quietly returned to her seat. The waiter nodded respectfully and took care of the bill. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at his empty glass, unsure whether to feel grateful or humiliated, but after a while he stood up, walked to Victoria's table and said softly, "You didn't have to do that." Victoria looked up at him, her eyes kind but perceptive. "Maybe not," she said, "but I know what it's like to have a night fall apart when all you wanted was something good." She gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. For a moment they talked. About work, about life, about his daughter, 7-year-old Maisie, who loved painting stars on the walls of her small bedroom, about the struggles of raising a child alone after losing someone you loved. And as the conversation deepened, something in Ethan shifted. For the first time in a long while, someone wasn't looking at him with pity. They were listening, really listening. Victoria didn't tell him she was a millionaire or a CEO. She didn't boast or make him feel small. She spoke with the kind of grace that only comes from people who have known both wealth and loss, who understand that true value is found in kindness, not in currency. When the evening ended, she smiled and said, "Ethan, I own a small development firm. We're actually expanding our automotive logistics department. You seem like the kind of person who works hard, even when life doesn't make it easy. Come by tomorrow. Let's talk about what you can offer." He hesitated. "You're serious?" "Completely," she said. "Sometimes all someone needs is for one stranger to believe in them." The next morning, Ethan showed up at the glass-front office, uncertain but hopeful, true to her word. Victoria interviewed him personally, not for his degrees or credentials, but for his spirit. Within a week, he was hired as a maintenance supervisor, earning more than he ever had before. For the first time in years, he could breathe. Months later, on a bright afternoon, Ethan stood in that same restaurant, only this time with Maisie by his side, her little hand clutching his across the room. Victoria sat waiting, smiling. As the two approached, Maisie carried a small bouquet of wildflowers tied with a blue ribbon. "These are for you," she said shyly. "Dad says you helped us when we really needed it." Victoria knelt to meet her eyes. "Your dad already had everything he needed. He just needed someone to remind him." As they all laughed, the sun poured through the windows, lighting their faces in gold. There was no tension this time, no pretense, just warmth, connection and gratitude, the kind that lingers long after the meal is over. Ethan often looked back on that night, the night that seemed to crumble before his eyes but turned into the beginning of everything good. Sometimes he wondered what might have happened if Victoria hadn't spoken up, if she'd stayed silent like everyone else. But then he remembered her words. Sometimes all someone needs is for one stranger to believe in them. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of kindness and the miracles that happen when compassion meets courage, please like, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Your engagement helps spread these stories of hope and humanity to more hearts around the world. And before you go, tell us in the comments, would you help a stranger if you saw their night falling apart? Because sometimes a simple act of kindness can rewrite someone's entire story.